Shalom, people. This is Brother Lars coming at you with another video. And I want to talk about going back to Africa. Now, as I stated in one of my videos, I do believe that the exodus of us as Hebrews out of America will not be straight back to the land, but will be back to Africa for a period of time, for the Most High to, basically codify us, bring us as one with our brothers and sisters that are in Africa. The other tribes that are already there, for Him to make the two sticks one. So I don't know how long that's gonna take. And of course, I gave the example that we seen when the children of Israel was wandering through the desert, and the Bible says that before they got into Israel, they came to these Amorite cities, and they dwelt in the cities of the Amorites for some years before they moved on to go into Canaan, right? So I do believe that, but I'm understanding, just from the fact that we have been separated from each other for some time, that such a mass move of us coming from America, and then the other nations where we were scattered and dispersed, when they come to Africa and all this coming together, it's gonna have to be a supernatural move of Yah, because of the different languages, the different cultures and everything. Even though we are all Hebrews, we've been living like the people in the nations that we were living in, were being oppressed. And so me and my wife watch different shows, on YouTube, showing the different Americans that go over to Africa to live, or they traveling back and forth on a regular basis, and we see the difficulty of them trying to adjust to their brothers. So not that they're uncomfortable around it, but it's a different mindset, right? And it is sort of like a culture shock for both of them. And so the thought came to my mind that this is nothing new. We know that the 10 northern tribes, as I stated in one of my videos, have, they have been separate from them, in the south have been separate from each other, and they never came back together. So Yah is doing something that hasn't been done for thousands of years. He's trying to bring us back together. And he said he was going to do that in the book of Ezekiel 37 and 38, right? And so I thought about this as I look at some of these videos, some of the problems, that we need to prepare ourselves and pray before we get there, because the Most High Yah is going to make it happen. But we are here on earth. That's why he said, we pray that thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So ultimately, we're going to have to be the one that's going to gotta walk in the will of the Most High Yah. So we must prepare our minds to walk in that, because there is a disconnect between us and our brothers in Africa. There is no doubt about it. And if you look at Proverbs 18 and 19, this is what I mean. He said, a brother offended is harder to be won than a strong city, and their contentions are like the bars of a castle. We know, like I said, the northern and southern kingdoms divided from each other because of the treatment of Solomon of the 10 northern tribes, and how Yah split them off, and they have never been united ever since. We know that that it was some of the northern kingdom that was still around in Israel around the time that Yeshua was there. But for the most part, a large portion of the 10 tribes that were taken in captivity by the Assyrians and taken out of the land, a lot of them never came back. A lot of them are dispersed into different parts of the world, which we know the majority of them are dispersed into Africa. Not, they wasn't dispersed into America, as is stated by some of the camps when they talk about Most High parted the Atlantic Ocean or something, and some kind of ridiculousness that they came up talking about Arcerith, that they crossed the ocean and all this other kind of stuff. It makes no sense. Most of the 10 northern tribes went into Africa, and that's, you know, can be proven by migration patterns. Okay, so again, it talks about the brothers being offended. It's harder to be won than a strong city. We are looking at a situation, like I stated, where we we just don't know how to uh, relate to each other because we've been apart for so long. Coming uh, from living in Babylon, from living in Egypt, spiritual Egypt, one of the fears that some of us, before we go over there, have is that we would come to pollute the innocency of the some of the African people, because they are more laid back and, not as aggressive toward the Westerners as we. But this is one of the reasons why I could believe that it's got to happen, because it's time for the Western powers to leave Africa alone. And I know when Yah sends us over there, and we already see it with some of our people, how we can rally our brothers and sisters to deal with these other nations the way they need to be dealt with. They don't need to be dealt with kid gloves. No, they don't. We look at um, uh, the Bible in, let's go to it, Isaiah 11, talking about the prophecy of when Judah shall team up with Ephraim, which is the northern kingdoms, and deal with the adversaries of us. I'm going to go to Isaiah 11 and 10. It said, "In that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for ensign of the people." Now the people is us, right? The root of Jesse is Judah. He said, "We will be the ensign is a flag, a thing that people rally around. So we're gonna be the flag for all our people and all 4 points of the earth where we have been scattered and dispersed. When we stand up, we're gonna be the rallying. We're gonna be the one that the flags will tell you what direction to go. So we gonna be an ensign. We gonna be the one that's gonna be leading this thing out, right? Judah is. And to it shall the Gentiles seek. To us, the Gentiles that want to continue to follow Yah and live for Him, they gonna follow us too. And the rest, in His rest shall be glorious. Talking about our rest when we what? When we get, well, ultimately the rest is gonna be when Yeshua, comes back to set up His government. But we should start seeing ourselves having especially when I listen to some of the brothers and sisters that went to Africa, they talk about how, you know, slow down things is to the point where you can get some rest or whatever. But said, excuse me. So our rest shall be glory. His rest shall be glorious. And he said, in Most High gonna set his hand a second time to recovers the remnant of the people from all the different places. I believe that once we, as the diaspora in America, North America, gets back to Africa, and we start setting up, and we start teaming up with our brothers and sisters that are there on the ground, we start dealing with some of these nations in there that are not dealing right with our African brothers and sisters, that all the other rest of the diaspora in all the different places, he said, Assyria, Egypt, Paphos, Cush, Elam, whatever, Hamath, we gonna start coming together. He said he shall set up an ensign, verse 12, for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel and gather the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Like I said, we're gonna come together. And I was talking to a gentleman the other day. He was from Senegal, and he was telling me about that Wakanda village is actually the amount of land that they have given them. I think it was 4,000 hectares, or it could be 400 hectares. I can't remember, but they said it's supposed to be on equivalent to a small nation. Sort of like what they say Akon is doing. He's just building a city from ground up, a technological city. Sort of like a Wakanda in Africa. There's gonna be, solar power cells. I mean, solar panels, solar power cells. Trying to reduce the carbon footprint, all of that stuff in Africa. I'm here to let you know, right, that Most High, since we as Americans, black people here in America, let me state that, have been living in one of the most technologically advanced, countries in the world, and a lot of our people, when the accidents do happen, have governmental and corporate experience, especially now with the pandemic going on and a lot of companies, shut down and a lot of people not working. When we get over there, Yah, I believe, is he's gonna use those skills to help us, to help our brothers and sisters harness that great wealth there in Africa, and that will be, I believe, part of their reparations, is get, getting us over there to help them get out of it what they should have been getting a long time ago, because the brain drain when they took a lot of us during the trans-Arab and the transatlantic slave trade, that one of the things that they did, they took, I heard one African say, they took the best when they pulled us into those slave ships, right? They took young people. A lot of the people that they took in those slave ships were not older people, they were young youth, right? And so he's going to use us to gather the nations. And in verse 13, he said, "The envy of Ephraim shall depart." Why is it going to? Why do they have envy? Because first of all, the northern and southern kingdom never got back together. And then when some of Judah, which had been dispersed out of uh, Jerusalem in 70 AD, and they went down into Africa, combined, start intermingling. Them having lost their heritage after thousands of years, and then some of the northern kingdoms having lost some of their heritage and not knowing who they were when they interacted with each other. When they, on that, we know that when the slave trade came, it was some it were not them not knowing that they were, some of them, not all of them, some of them not knowing that they were Hebrew tribes. They were sold by other Hebrew tribes into slavery, Um, but we know that there's a lot of animosity and anger about that with a lot of black Americans about what happened during the slave trade. But some of the Africans envy is the fact that when we got to America and we was able to, first get our freedom, semi-freedom, somewhat, um, in these lands that were in, right? We were able to do that, and um, we started fighting for a lot of things that we needed. They were not so inclined, not on on a continual basis. For a long time, they were in colonization, right? And you know, we we lived somewhat, even though we were in slavery. Somewhat we carved out sometimes a better life than they did on the continent, even though it was their own nations, right? Probably has something to do with, you know, the residual of selling your brothers and sisters into slavery, that you reap what you sow, right? But it says, in the adversaries of Judah, verse 13, shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah shall not vex Ephraim, meaning that that animosity and hatred, the hatred that some of us had for the thought that, they sold us into slavery, and then the thought that they had when we taught, real bad about Africans when we grew up, because we didn't realize that the connection, and would say we're not going back to the jungle, and all this other kind of stuff that we would say. Um, all that stuff is gonna it's gotta beam it's gonna be it's gotta be broken down. It's gotta go away, because we gotta become as one. We got to become as one. Why do we have to become as one? Verse 14 tells us, he said, but they, talking about Ephraim and Judah, when they combine the two sticks, according to Ezekiel, they shall fly upon the shoulders of the Philistines toward the west. They shall spoil them of the east together. They shall lay their hand upon Edom and Moab, and the children of Ammon shall obey them. So apparently when we come together, we're going to come together in some kind of force that is going to be able to deal with our enemies, wherever they may be. When you said store them of the east together, I don't know what that means. Does that mean, those in the Middle East, those in the east part of Africa, where we know that they're talking about the genocide and stuff that was in Central Africa with the Congo and Rwanda and Uganda or whatever. He says they shall lay their hands upon Edom and Moab, and the children of Ammon shall obey them. This is, I believe, when he talking about maybe once we come back into the land, what they call the Middle East, those areas of Jordan and Saudi Arabia and Yemen and all these other places, which land is supposed to belong to us. Verse 15 said, the master shall utterly destroy the tongue of the Egyptian sea, and with his mighty wind shall he shake his hand over the river, and shall smite it in 7 streams, and make them men go over dry shod. I believe this is once Yah coalesced us into Africa. He's purged out the rebels. He already stated that it ain't gonna be no evil that's gonna go back to the land. This is all the people that have come out of the remnant. He's done his great work. We repented. We renewed the covenant with him. And something has happened where all those people in the Middle East today, either they're going to still be there, or some of them going to be migrated, moved out. I don't know. That I don't know what part of prophecy that can be covered in. Uh, I don't know if it means that the land is going to be totally barren, but that there might be some people groups in there that might, put up resistance. But when we come in, that Most High, some kind of supernatural way is going to help to drive them out. And what verse 16 talks about, it talks about how we going to go across. Verse 15 and 16 talks about how he gonna strike the 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 tongue of the Egyptian sea, and so that we can go across the river, and he's gonna smite it in 7 streams and make us be able to walk across or drive across or however. And I think that's around where the Aswan Dam is in um, Egypt. And that by that time, the real Egyptians are gonna be back in their land too. That those people that aren't. So who knows? All this stuff could take some years to get to. But I believe once we get back into the land, that's what we're gonna see. Right? I believe that. And he talks about the highway for the remnant of his people that shall be left from Assyria, like as it was to Israel in the day that he came up out of the land of Egypt. So there's going to be some of us coming down from, uh, I guess, Europe and some in the Asia Minor. Because, during the 60s and 70s, when a lot of civil wars and stuff broke out in Africa, a lot of African people, they left to go to other countries to live, to get away from some of the civil wars. So it's a lot of black people in a lot of little places, and then plus those that have been living in certain areas of the world for thousands of years that we never met. But I also believe that we got to learn how to deal with the hurt and the things that were brought up by the transatlantic slave trade or whatever. And Yah has showed us the way. He showed us the way um with Genesis 45 1 through 8. Now remember that when Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers, you know, they never thought that they would see him again. And yeah, they had that door of return. Some of our people never did see Africa again. But some of them that had offspring that, lived and are alive now, they're gonna be able to go back and say that my ancestor didn't make it back physically himself or herself, but through me they making it back into Africa. And so it's just I remember when I went into Africa, but of course I was deployed there with the military, but I was in East Africa, I wasn't in West Africa. But I did tell my wife that I remember when I stepped down on the ground, my foot first hit the soil of Africa, I felt like a heavy weight lift off of me. It was like something lifted off and said, I'm back. Now you can take that for what you want to. My understanding of the Bible, I don't believe in necromancy. I don't believe in worshiping the ancestors, all that. But I did feel a connection. There's such a thing as called epigenetics. There's stuff in your genes that can be triggered by different things, and I believe that's what happened with me. But getting back to what I was saying about Genesis 45, and dealing with Joseph. Remember, I said he had been sold in slavery by his brothers. He said, but verse 1, but then Joseph could not refrain himself from all them that stood by him, and he cried, cause every man to go out from me. And there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh heard. And Joseph said unto his brother, I am Joseph. Does my father yet live? And his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. And Joseph said unto his brothers, Come near me, I pray you. And come, and they came near, and he said, I am Joseph your brother, whom ye sold into Egypt. Now therefore be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves, that ye sold me hither. For Yah did send me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years has a famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years in the which there shall nothing be earing nor harvest. And Yah sent me before you to preserve you a prosperity in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. And so now it was not you that sent me hither, but Yah, and he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Now, and the reverse is going to happen. At this time, Joseph saved the brothers, but now, and he was sold in slavery. But Joseph, some of the tribes that still in Africa sold us to the Portuguese and to the English and the French and all these, and we went off to Egypt. We went off to our houses of bondage, in particular America, which to me is the most significant because the smallest amount of slaves was sent to America, but out of that we landed in what was going to become the most powerful nation, and we was going to learn different things. We was going to learn different systems. We was going to learn different technologies. We was going to build up this nation to be the greatest nation, uh, of the most terrible beast that Daniel described, that was able to trample down and tread down stuff, and this was the most ferocious, right? And we've been part of that, for good or bad, right? And so we learn these different things, right, that we know working for different companies or whatever. Whereas in a lot of African nations, they have their own nation, but they don't know how to govern. They don't know how to take advantage of the natural resources. They don't know how to deal with Westerners like we do. And so once we are able to go over there, and the Bible said that we're gonna be, Judah gonna be the enzyme for the peoples. We're gonna be able to help inspire them. We're gonna be able to help together now, not dominating, but we're gonna be able to help. The Bible said, Judah is whom the brothers shall praise. We're gonna be able to inspire and team up together and help get this thing done, right? And help our people prosper in this place that has been divided up, which should never been divided up. And we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. And be able to bring in the rest of the diaspora. That is going to be coming upon us once we get over there. And so, again, uh, we must be able to be like Joseph was. He was forgiving of his brother. He was understanding. He was like, look, what you did, you didn't understand. You was preserving life, because if we had stayed in Africa, a lot of people don't realize that for the first 200 years of the slave trade, they only took men. They didn't bring any women. And so Africa, it was a great amount of mulatto people in Africa at one time, because the women didn't have no men, but the colonizers, the Portuguese and the English and the French and all them, to sleep with. And they had a lot of cities over there. I seen this on C-SPAN report one time. They had a lot of these cities full of mulatto children, right? And so again, right, the 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 things that they meant, for bad, it preserved some of us right? Get over there and when we come back, like I said, it's gonna be a joyous time for the two sticks to come back together. Um, we was able to help inspire to stop the abolitionists and to stop the slave trade. We was able to do that in the places that we went off to. A lot of our slaves when we ran from the South in America into the North, we was able to inspire abolitionists. We went over to England and France and other places and preached abolition of slavery. So we was able to get the colonizers to stop the actual taking of slaves. Now we know that slavery still went on in some form or another, but I'm saying we 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 was able to stop it. We was able to cause some things to happen, and so I'm believing that when we get back, we got to be able to forgive. We got to be able to look our brother and sister in the eye. And when they say, like the Ghana chief said, what they did, how they had more guns than them. We got to be able to accept the apology and say, man, we about nation building. We about getting ourselves together for the Most High. Whatever it is that He have for us. Because some people believe that Africa is all of Africa is a land. I don't believe that all Africa is a land. No parts of Africa is Israel. There's no doubt about that, but not all of it. I think it's just like I said, from the Nile River to the Euphrates and all the way up into some parts of Lebanon or whatever. That's the land. The Arabian Peninsula, all that belongs to Shem, which is us. And so that's what I'm believing, right? I'm believing that, yeah, that Yah is gonna break down those walls. They must come down. Those iron bars that we have built up over time with each other. And indeed, we're gonna probably be able to show, some of the things that they doing. That hey, well, rather the Most High is gonna inspire us, everybody, to hopefully to get rid of these different languages we got, these different cultures. That's why the Most High Yah is gonna have to come in there. He's gonna have to change all that because He said He's gonna deliver us a pure language and all this stuff. So I can't wait for that day. So that's all I have for right now. I can't wait. It's something about going to a country where from top to bottom you see black people in authority. You see mostly the people on the street look like you, and it's a comfortableness. It's a vibe that's put out there like you won't believe. And I was in East Africa. I didn't even go to West. And I'm definitely believe wherever my tribe is in West Africa somewhere. I can't imagine what the vibe is gonna be like to be with nothing but people like yourself. And I'm not being nostalgic or whatever, because like I said, I know when the way we left, we was on slave ships. But I'm saying going back, it's just the vibe that we're gonna get, that Yah is gonna finally help us come together and do something, not just temporarily, but something's going to lead to us being able to go back ultimately into the promised land and redo that. But Africa is going to be, I think, a place where He's going to purge more of the rebels from amongst us. So that's my lesson today. The walls must come down. I want you to share this video. I want you to like it. I want you to subscribe. Be blessed.